From Hue, the old capital, we took a short flight to the current Vietnamese capital, Hanoi. Staying in the old quarter. We love this mildly chaotic area with people on the streets, motorbikes on the sidewalks, and restaurants and cafes housed in French-era buildings, and wonderfully old trees. There were many restaurants in the area, and food was so cheap that even though there was a nearby market street, it wasn't worth shopping there, except for the fresh tropical fruit that we always had a ready supply of. One of the first things that we did in Hanoi was to take a walking street and food tour, the details of which are in the video about section. The first stop didn't even look like a restaurant, but apparently it had been in business since 1910, and the food was fantastic. The next stop was a banh mi place, where the secret was the homemade warm pâté. The third was a family-run pho shop. The patriarch was decorated veteran of the American War, as they call the Vietnam War here. Between food stops, we saw other aspects of Hanoi, like a street that sells just religious items, a shop with handicrafts by the indigenous peoples who live mostly up in the mountains, and a walk-through narrow street market. Other food stops were a shaved ice dessert place and a wonderful coffee place. The French brought coffee plantations to Vietnam, but the Vietnamese have run with it. There are many local roaster shops and local sweet styles like egg coffee and the infamous weasel coffee. On our tour, we sat on the balcony and enjoyed a wonderful coconut coffee. Our tour included tickets to an evening water puppet show. Born 1,000 years ago in the rice paddies of northern Vietnam and now performed in a shallow indoor pool, the show was a musical retelling of ancient folk stories. With swimming, fire-breathing dragons, a visit by the Dao Mao Mother Goddess, a royal visit to an honored village, and a hapless villager trying to protect his ducks from a wily fox. The show was short and very entertaining. One tale was about Emperor Lê Loi returning a magical sword to the turtle god, who lived in the nearby Hoi Kiem Lake. The lake's name, meaning returned sword, was given by the emperor, who, much like the King Arthur legend, defeated the Ming Chinese, aided by a magical sword, Heaven's Will, to regain Vietnamese independence in 1428. Turtle Tower supposedly marks the area where the turtle god appeared to the emperor. And Ngoc Song Temple celebrates an extinct species of turtle believed to be unique to the lake. On weekends, the roads around Hoi Kiem Lake are closed to traffic and become a family-friendly walking street, where you can even get a haircut. At night, you can get up and away from the streets at one of the nearby rooftop bars. Northwest of the Old Quarter, a long walk or a short taxi ride away, the streets and sidewalks are generally wider. with many modern-looking apartment buildings and more under construction. The landscape is dominated by the large West Lake and the smaller Truk Bak Lake that was carved out of West Lake in the 17th century by a dike and road that locals used for fishing. On the south side of the lakes, Quan Tan Temple is an 11th century Taoist temple and still one of the most important temples in Hanoi. Its centerpiece is a 17th century 4-ton bronze statue, a Vietnamese national treasure, and $100 bottles of whiskey are left as offerings. Heading north along the dike, Tran Quoc Pagoda sits on a small island. Built in the 6th century during the first brief period of Vietnamese independence from China, is the oldest Buddhist temple in Hanoi. The delicate 11-tier pagoda represents ascension to nirvana, and a distinctly Vietnamese Han Non Bo landscape is topped with the Dao Mao Mother Goddess. South of the lakes, the ancient imperial citadel of Dan Long was once the center of a walled city. First built in the 11th century after the kingdom of Dai Viet won independence from China, in 1802, the Nguyen dynasty moved the capital south and rebuilt and modernized the fortress, which stood for another 80 years, until the French conquered Vietnam and destroyed most of the citadel. Only the northern gate was left standing, complete with impact holes fired from a gunboat over 2 miles away as a reminder of French power. The citadel was declared a UNESCO site in 2010, but very little has been restored so far, mostly relying on representations of what things used to look like. Though the color scheme matched Avic's outfit very well. The French converted many Vietnamese to Catholicism and opened the first church in Hanoi, St. Joseph's Cathedral, in 1886. There are still a significant minority of Catholics in Vietnam, and regular masses are held in Vietnamese, French, and even English. The French also built La Maison Centrale, the infamous Hoa Lo prison, in 1896, known in America as the Hanoi Hilton. But that's a topic for a later video. Nearby the prison, the Vietnamese Women's Museum is a remarkable place, presenting the history of the role of women in Vietnam. Its extensive collection is displayed on 4 levels. The section on marriage covers traditions from all over Vietnam. In wealthy cities and poorer villages. And many are matriarchal and matrilineal. The fashions displayed are diverse, covering a wide array of indigenous clothing. And this extends to the child-rearing and family life sections. One Vietnamese tradition is that women do a lot of the work. In cities, women run their own small businesses, as can be seen daily on the streets, and, according to the museum, generally keep their own money. While much of Vietnamese society is male-dominated, nearly 3/4 of women are in the workforce, and 1/4 of the members of parliament are women. The top floor covers women in war, a tradition dating back 2,000 years to the legendary Trung sisters, who led the first substantial rebellion against the Chinese. Nguyen Thi Dinh a general during the 1960s and 70s, and vice president in the 1980s, founded this museum. But this will also be covered in a future video. So please hit like and subscribe, and don't miss out on our upcoming chapters.